I choose to walk in the spirit is difficult, dealing with all of the ignorance. But in the Bible, it's still talking about the Bible. What is the benefit? Everything about your counterfeit, there ain't no rebuttal you can counter with. On the internet, you the master teacher. In real life, you powerless. Keep it real with you, I don't have time for this. I ride for this, my forefathers died for this. They cry for this opportunity presently I possess, and right now you are the opposite. If you walk in love, you fulfill the law. Don't get involved and you ain't giving it all. If you ever think it's cool to threaten another man's family, then you already lost. Chemtrails got aluminum, heavy metal saturate the atmosphere. Manhattan Project, time travel, Mandela effect, what happened here? GMO food processing to the whole world become obsolete. A black man who believes in Jesus got my own team taking shots at me. You trespassing on property that you don't fully understand properly. All the back and forth, that's not for me, that's for ROC and the war machine. If we ride together, then we ride together. If we can't do it, I'd rather leave. I still stand on the word of God till the day I die and no longer breathe. We trapped inside the diaspora, nightmares of the massacre. Cold sweat, I'm below deck in the middle passage, just a passenger. Revolutionary hardcore, liberation, that's a hard job. You ain't ready, you a oddball, keep your mouth closed like lockjaw. I learned trying to bring people together on the same page, make them separate. All the talk about reconciliation, when the time comes, you hesitate. If Jesus was able to sit at the table with a bunch of sinners, you very fake. Your steps ordered by the Lord, and how it was yesterday, your big mistake. We the city sitting on the hill. Guess it all depends on how you live. Guess it all depends on how you feel, and we both know that ain't God's will. I stood on what I felt was right. I don't never question if God's real. Trapped inside this matrix, I'm about to pop the red and the blue pill.
Bless them which persecute you. Bless and curse not. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, said the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. Romans 12:14-21.
Peace, peace, peace. What it is, it's your brother Tyvon Swano, aka the Orthodox Moor, aka the Seven Pillar Saracen, aka Brother Moore. And today I am pleased to bring to you a DNA dialogue and conversation with the End of the World Ministries and with Minister Teo and Minister Jacob. This was a kind of like a last second conversation or setup. Like we talked about this last night. I went live last night talking about some stuff that was going on in the community. They reached out to me last night, which was really fast. So I'm grateful for them to reach out to me like as quick as they did, because not a lot of people A would have the conversation, but B would reach out as quick as they did. So I appreciate the brothers for coming through and being willing to talk about haplogroups and autosomal DNA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I definitely want to make sure that they get one, they get credit for coming through. B, they let me know that they thought they got a lot of positions of theirs mischaracterized and misinterpreted, et cetera, and whatnot. So I want to make sure they get as much time as possible to make sure that they get their positions clearly understood by the people and not have them misunderstood in any way, shape, or form. So I appreciate the brothers for coming through for that alone, just so people can be clear about what their position is and clear about what their issues are concerning haplogroups, etc. So with that, I'm going to bring the brothers on. So again, I appreciate y'all brothers for coming through. And like I said, y'all have the floor and we can address whatever you want to, whatever speed y'all want to.
Cool. Salama family, salama. Greetings to everyone, all the Israelite family. Let's put some history on this. So just so you can have an understanding how we are where we are today. So now, for you all to understand, Jacob and I were out sick for a good while. Jacob had been sick for years. Now, in the midst of all of that, Abu has been harassing Yacoba on Facebook, constantly trying to get him to give him his position on haplogroups. Now, we told both of these guys, we don't believe in haplogroup. We don't believe DNA is valid or useful. We don't follow it. We believe in the curses. Okay. So from our position, we were done. I mean, I don't know why you would want my opinion when I don't think it's valid.
Yeah,
okay,
and useful from a biblical perspective.
What's that?
You said it's not useful, but useful from
a
biblical.
I'm saying useful from identifying who the people of the book are in the latter days. Okay.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, just from that context. Okay, so this has been our position, and on top of that, Abu was nonstop bothering us. So what happened in Facebook is Abu is bothering Yacoba start commenting. And then I get in there, I start answering some questions. I get accused of not answering the questions. Even Yacoba answered Tyvon's question in the chat that he said in the video yesterday that he didn't answer. He specifically outlined that. Okay, so from context, this is the history. We weren't trying to engage in this conversation. If you want to have a haplogroup discussion and you believe in it, then fine. That's called building. But when you got some people who say, I don't believe it's valid in this context, why do you want my opinion? But we're going to do it now. We're going to answer those questions. We're going to give Orthodox Moore the answers to every question he has. Okay, but let's see.
One thing I want to add. Okay, remember, we were out, right? We were out. You didn't hear us talk about DNA for 2 years, right? Because we said we don't believe in it. We done, right? Don't ask us. We told some of y'all follow us. Y'all know we said that. I told Abu, we done. We don't deal with DNA anymore. We only believe in the curses, right? Abu want to harass me for 2 effing years. 2 years that nigga was chasing me down. I'm telling them, Abu, look, all I believe in is the curses to identify Israel. He don't let it go. So what happens? He go on Berean TV and then he want to misrepresent our position. So once you bring my name up, once you misrepresent me, I got to confront. Okay.
And that's a good point.
He lucky I didn't do what I could have done, right? Which would become a candy man. I could do that easy, right? I could do that because you know me, but I pulled back. Now see with Brother Tyvon, he is real. I'm not going to mess with him because he is real. But I do think, Brother Tyvon, that you jumped into something that you wasn't invited to, because when we went to the YouTube channel and we invited you to that discussion, it was because you were part of the people who came on the panel to ask us questions. So we invited you to share that email with you all, right? We wasn't really using it as a source per se. We just wanted you all to understand part of our position because, some of y'all talk about the cats and the hidden scholars and stuff. No, we're not hiding nothing. We just don't want to be in it, right? We don't want to be part of the circus where people start going around, calling up the guy, asking him these questions and all these things, right? We didn't want to be a part of that because guess what? We don't care.
Right. And I want to add concerning Abu's tactics, right? We as Yacoba said, 2 years he told this guy no. So what he does, since he doesn't get the answers he wants, he uses Berean to pull us in by pulling up our video and then making incorrect statements about our position, which pulled me in to go and comment. I hadn't been talking about haplogroups for 2 years. And then on top of it, Berean's how he does, he pulls in Genesis 49 and Tavon on top of my discussion with Abu. So now I'm dealing with 4 people, because Berean interjecting. I'm dealing with 4 people by myself, and I hadn't dealt with this topic in 2 years. So we can get to this topic, but Minister Yacoba, you can continue. Oh, I wanted to say this. Now, Tavon, you could have sent me an email, both of us an email, and you would have got the answers to every question. But this calling us out on YouTube, challenging us and posturing, I don't think that was the way to do it. I don't think you would have had a problem getting an answer from us. The only person who has a problem getting an answer from us is Abu. You could have hit us up just like you did the first time. The first time when you invited us on your show, you came via email and you say, brothers, I'd like to talk to you about Haplogroup, right? And so that was proper. And you would have got the same positive response. We would have had that dialogue. But like yesterday, man, that was posturing and really confrontational. And I mean, you could have got those answers.
Oh, okay. So just to be clear, about what they're talking about in terms of Abu harassing them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My public position has been since day one for Dante or for anyone else that does not want to deal with the urban apologist or anybody else from that side, et cetera, that they don't have to. And that I tell people that, you know what I'm saying, that you guys are not obligated to give them an answer. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate y'all dealing with me because I am Israel, et cetera. And to be clear, when you tagged me in that YouTube post, I did respond really quickly and I asked for a conversation, of which I still got no response.
When I gave you that post, that was to give you information to share that came out of the Berean show. That was not to have a DNA discussion if we don't talk DNA when we don't believe it, right? So this was information that you may not have had, right? So I was sharing that with you. I say, look, okay, here's some information that you guys may not have considered. I'm sharing this with you just so you can understand this came from a person with the ISOGG, and you may find this useful in your studies. That's the purpose of it. I was putting it, I included you out of respect. That was it.
Okay, I appreciate the respect. So just to be clear, are you saying that I did not reply in that same thread and ask for a conversation respectfully?
I'm saying you could have came and said, here's the list of questions. You wanted me to come on your show. What I'm telling you is I would have answered your questions in email.
So we've had a public conversation list before, correct?
Of course.
Are you saying there was an issue for me asking for a public conversation this time, or
there wasn't an issue with you asking? What I'm saying is we were willing to have the conversation via email. I don't feel like we have to, we're obligated to come on anyone's program to defend ourselves, right? If we're going to dialogue, we break bread, we build, we have a conversation behind the scenes. And then, if you want, then, if that worked out, you could say, well, hey, I like the conversation where it's going. Maybe y'all want to come on my show, like that. The way you did it, I felt like you were just calling me out.
And here's the other thing, right? At that time, we weren't doing no more discussions on DNA. Go look at our channel. We never brought it up again, right? They brought up the concept of DNA. Abu is the one that brought up this topic and brought us in by being a little B and trying to sneak around to get us to talk to him on Berean TV. So he went there, since he couldn't get me to answer his questions on Facebook, he went on Berean to misrepresent our position because he knew we're not going to let you lie on us, right? So that's how all of this started. So when we offered the information to you, Orthodox, and you asked that question, here's the thing. And Minister Taylor say, look, one, we ain't got to accept the offer, but two, you all don't realize that wasn't even enough time to respond, okay? But that was only a few days ago. Nobody usually responds. The only reason we respond to Tavon this quick is because he brought us up last night and he misrepresented us last night, right? So as we said, if you misrepresent me, I'm gonna come. Okay, if you lie on me, I'm gonna come. Okay, just like Abu got that smoke because Abu lied. Okay, Abu got that smoke because Abu always hunt me down like a little woman. Okay, so my whole point was, and I told Abu this, that I don't talk DNA. Some of y'all remember listening to the last show that we did where I said we no longer talking about DNA. Okay, so that whole thing is all Abu's fault.
And here's the thing. Look, I don't know what your relationship is with Abu, right? I don't know how far y'all go back, what's going on. All I know is my observations of Abu and his methodology on how he attacked Pastor Kelly in the pews. It was nefarious with an agenda. Okay, and in my opinion, I see Abu as, and this is my opinion. Don't get on me. I have a right to have an opinion. It's my opinion that he's a Jesuit. Okay, because when he got involved in the Israelite community, he all he did was position himself to pull on the threads of the teachings that Pastor Kelly and them had on the pews. And he just pulled on the thread. He never took a position to say, well, maybe this is Hebrew. Maybe his goal was to undermine that whole thing. Now, Jacob and I, when it came to the pews, we didn't care. We weren't interested. Now, after Benya and Kelly and them put some videos out, it was intriguing. Okay. But prior to that, we had no stake in it. The only thing happened was Brown invited us on to show us something, and then that was it. We had no stake in the game. All right, so I'm saying Abu's methodology, even when he's dealing with haplogroups, is really to attack and undermine the Israelite community. We're not foolish. We can see this, and this is why we don't have anything to do with that guy. It's obvious, just like he manipulated Berean into attacking us. Berean should have said, look, Abu want to talk about y'all. I'm going to let y'all know, do y'all want to come on? That's what Berean should have did, but he let Abu use him.
Oh, okay. So just to be clear, at this juncture, if we're going to keep talking about Abu, I got to send him the link because he's not here to defend himself.
Well, if you want to talk about haplogroup, we can start doing that right now.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool.
And then if you want to interview Abu outside of that, have him on like you invited us on. But you did invite us on to talk about haplogroup. So if you want to do that, we can do that.
Right. Now,
and Abu will be dealt with. So don't even worry about that.
Well, remember, I did tell you ahead of time that we were going to cover what happened the day before, the history. Right. And you said, OK, speak your mind. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And I'm letting it be known that if we're going to continue to talk about someone who's not here to defend themselves, I'm going to have to give them the link because I would do the same thing for y'all. But we can, all that's noted. You know what I'm saying? All your issues with the Abu is noted. Yeah, to be clear, I don't have any special relationship with Abu. I have a professional respect for Abu because, as a matter of fact, because of the whole Pew situation. In the whole Pew situation, I was involved with that. I was talking to Pastor Kelly. I was talking to everybody involved. As a matter of fact,
well, let me ask you this.
I'm in the middle of me talking, so I don't.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you good. You good. So we all respectfully disagreed on what was on the pews. Like Pastor Kelly at one point said there could have been Arabic on the pews in terms of a script, and he went around and said at one point that there's no Arabic on the pews or whatever. Abu took an opinion of. That if there was going to be a script on there, it made more sense that it could be Arabic, but he took a position that there was no script on the pews whatsoever. I took the position that again, so Pastor Kelly took the position that there was Sola Trail plus also other African scripts. I took the position that there was multiple African scripts, including Arabic. And if there was Hebrew on the pews, it was most likely going to be in Arabic. I did my own independent research and talked to scholars, brought their information out in terms of Sola Trail, etc. And the history on that's out there. You know what I'm saying? The history on the cats thing is out there. I was the first person to come out and give Maury Brown a particular way out to deal with that. So there was a falsifiable way to deal with who cats was. And I ought to say like this, like so. If we want to talk about the pews, that's going to be a whole separate show in and of itself because there's a lot of information and details. I don't want to distract from this conversation because it's very important that if you're saying that your position got mischaracterized, it's important that we get it clarified. But to be clear, the whole reason why I jumped on and started asking questions on Berean's channel was because I've talked to y'all about this before. I haven't brought y'all's name up about it since. It's not something we've talked about since. I heard Tayu say something about how haplogroup science was faulty and that autosomal was the way to go if you want to figure things out. At that juncture, I'm hearing a methodology being proposed. I'm hearing that one is no good and another one should be followed. So at that juncture, I'm trying to figure out a workable model for how this works. If in public we're being told that the haplogroup concept should not work. Now, if your position is you don't want to deal with DNA, period, we don't got to have the conversation at all if you don't want to. But if you're going to come out here and talk about like, okay, the haplogroup stuff is faulty, we should be using this method instead, then I think it's viable to ask questions and scrutinize the concept.
Well, I just want to make known that we did answer that in another video. Nobody wants to do that. We've also answered that on Sister E's show. Nobody wants to listen to that. But, you know, people say, no, you didn't answer the question. Well, we did. Okay. But yeah, let's get started on this. Let's talk about DNA.
Right. And don't forget, I mean, you came on a show that Boo manipulated. And when we were only on there to defend our position, we were not on there to have a DNA discussion. We were there to correct his false claims and accusations.
So in both situations, right? Like, so when I was on the show and with the whole YouTube post, nowhere was there any verbal communication that you were only there for the one thing and you did not wish to entertain any other conversation. Just like in the YouTube post, there was no reply saying, you know what, we can do this via email. So to be clear, I'm not a mind reader, fam. I'm not Miss Cleo. You cannot call me no. You feel me?
Look, so, Orthodox, we're not here to deal with you, right? Okay, the whole issue was about Abu. Okay, now I understand you got on there and you had questions and you have valid questions, and that's fine. And that's why we're here today to answer those questions.
Right. And yeah, I wasn't offended with you coming on. All right. But, you know, what Berean tends to do is start letting all these people come on, and then you stand there by yourself defending against 5 people like you're in a fight. That's why I don't go on Berean. Okay. But I mean, I could have had that discussion with you. I will not have that discussion with Abu, but we can get into the DNA and all of that. So, you know, one thing, and I can move into that. One thing I said that was falsely stated on your part was that I never answered the question about percentage. I literally actually said, I don't know. You're correct. I said, this is why I don't follow the haplogroup, you know, or try to use DNA at all for autosomal to prove Israel, because you were saying, yeah, how do you know at what percentage makes up Israel? I said, you're right. I don't know. And that's why we follow the curses. That was my answer. When it came to me saying E to D, I got that backwards, right? But what I was trying to say was how the nomenclature occurred. And my point was accurate, right? So if I can, let me give you a link, and I'll try to share my screen in a second. Let's see where I'm at here. Okay.
So while you're looking that up, to be clear, let me apologize right off rip for that small mischaracterization, because yes, you did say that you didn't know, and what I meant by didn't answer the question was didn't fill in that part of the model. So I apologize for not being more specific there. So if I'm hearing like, this is why I asked, like in my video, I was talking about a workable model, right? So in my head, if autosomal, if there's a percentage cutoff of what makes you one thing or another, that specific aspect needs to be applied, that needs to be worked out in a workable model, right? So if it's not there, then to me it's an unanswered part of the model. So I apologize if it sounds like I'm saying I asked you the question, you didn't say anything back. No. I asked you the question, you said exactly what you said, that you didn't know, right? And so what I'm saying is like that, I'm saying the question is left unanswered with the question mark as to what is the percentage cutoff of what makes somebody an autosomal Israelite or not.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, that's valid from a scientific approach. And I mean, and the things you do ask, I'm not saying they're incorrect as far as what you're trying to achieve. All right. Our position was we really weren't trying to have the DNA discussion. We were there to stop Abu from mischaracterizing our position. But so let me just see if I can share this page here right quick.
Hey, real quick then, like, so before we get into this part, then, like, so if Abu mischaracterized your position, what did he mischaracterize? Just so everyone's clear, that brought you on to clarify. Because that I think that would be important for everyone to understand there. Because that was the ball that got the whole thing rolling, that got me on, right? Because you jumped on, which is what got me.
Well, he was saying something similar to you, right? Where he was saying that, you know, they never told us about the paternal and the maternal, and how do you get there? How do you determine who's the paternal and all these type of questions, right? And so he said that we didn't answer, and we did answer, right? And also, what was it he said? What else? He said something else about the haplogroup and our position on it. I can't remember. Because to be honest with you, I don't listen to Abu like that. But you know, I think a lot of his questions were the same ones you have. So we're gonna answer that today.
Yeah, but I'm trying to figure out. So, say, what were you saying that he mischaracterized that got you onto the show? Because you jumped on before I did.
Well, as Jacoba was saying, he was stating he was mischaracterizing our position on what we believe and accusing us of not giving information as well, right? Being vague. And I'm like, we weren't trying. The issue was we were never trying to have a conversation with Abu, right? And so he's given the impression that, you know, we're out here trying to teach haplogroup and all of this to him, and we're not putting out the information that he needs. I'm like, well, we weren't trying to give you anything.
Yeah, we're not trying to teach DNA, right? And he want us to, you know, confirm our position on DNA. And we like, look, we already told you we believe that the curses identify Israel. Period. There's no further discussion because we don't think DNA is valid in determining who's Israel. But he wouldn't listen. He keep going back to the paternal maternal. So he, in that sense, he was misrepresenting our position because we kept telling him, and everybody knows, Teo Ministries believe that the curses identify Israel, period.
Okay, so let me ask this one small clarification question so everybody can understand what your position is right now and not get it misunderstood, right? So is it your position that we shouldn't be dealing with DNA at all, or that if we do, we should be dealing with the autosomal concept?
Well, we're saying that, I mean, to be honest, right, we're trying to say who's Jacob, right, and who's not, right? Isn't that the ultimate goal, right? Right? Orthodox?
Yeah, so I'm asking you, like, what method are you saying? Like, do you just deal with the curses, or are you saying don't deal with DNA at all?
Well, I'm going there. I'm saying, isn't the goal as far as our community discussion, the purpose is to identify who is the descendants of Jacob, right?
Sure. I'm not talking about what, I'm talking about how, though.
No,
well, I'm going somewhere.
Trying to get to a meeting of the mind. Come on, let's get with it.
Coming right. Okay, so you agree? You said that's the ultimate goal for the community, correct?
For some of them, yeah.
Okay, what's your goal? Because maybe that's the problem. Is maybe you have a different goal.
So for me, I have a lot of different goals in terms of the DNA and whatnot. So like, I'm about migrations and whatnot. So for instance, like I said in my video, I'm trying to use it to be able to figure out, like, so if, for instance, if Dante wants to figure out if he's the son of a Limba man that got caught up in the slave trade, how does that work out? How do we prove that out? I'm interested in finding out methods to where, like, okay, if we find an ancient dig site that has a multitude of different ancient DNAs or whatever, and we think this is an Israelite site, which people can we identify who's natural Israel and who is the sojourners that came in with them, etc. Like what methods can we use for that, etc. I'm interested in stuff like that, right?
Okay, so as far as identifying who Israel, I agree with you, and this is our point. Our point is that very fact that if you're going to try to identify who is Israel, you first must know that you have an Israelite DNA to compare. It doesn't matter about haplogroup because everything else, everybody is theorizing what is Jacob's haplogroup. And I mean, we don't even know what bones belong to the Israelites. The ancient Israelites, we don't have no samples, right? We don't have Jacob's DNA. We don't have Jacob's DNA that we can compare to. But what we're saying is, if you're really trying to prove who's his descendants, the only way to really identify your family members, because that's what you are if you're a descendant, is autosomal approach, right? To look at the majority of the DNA to identify who you're related to. Haplogroup doesn't really do that. And I think, so what happens is I see the community going on this tangent of this haplogroup theory. And I'm starting to realize when the Bible said, endless genealogy, this is what I'm seeing here, right? Because that's what's happening is there's a lot of conversation that's going nowhere. All right. So I wanted to show this document here, right? You can see it's a government site. And this is what I was trying to say when I was talking about.
Blow it up a little bit for the people.
Okay, let me zoom up then. Let's see here.
And while you're doing that, just to be clear, you are saying that if you're going to use DNA, or it sounds like, so correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like you're saying if you're going to use DNA, the autosomal route would be the best route to use.
Well, if you got to admit, I've always said the only way to prove who the father is what? Autosomal, right? I've always said that. And so Jacob's our father. So how are we going to prove who our father is, right? It has to be autosomal, right? And there are ways to do that over time, right? I mean, I know, and I guess you'll be asking those questions, so we'll wait for you to get to those questions. But as far as when I was talking about, E to F, right? And I said E to D because I was, I got on at the last minute, hadn't talked about it for years. Mm-hmm. But this is what I was basically trying to say, this highlighted part, right?
Hey, real quick for the people. Hey, so can y'all read that, or does he need to?
Do I need to zoom up some more because it's big on my screen?
If it's okay, shoot me the one. If it needs to zoom, shoot me the two right quick.
I'll try to zoom up anyway. Let me do that.
Okay. You got it.
Does that help?
Yeah, I can read it.
Okay. All right. To devise a nomenclature system at a reasonable scale, we assigned a capital letter to several of the major clades, beginning with the letter A for the haplogroup above the position of the root in figure 1, forget that, and continuing through the alphabet to the letter R. The letter Y was assigned to the most inclusive haplogroup comprising haplogroups A to R. Deciding which clades are to receive the highest labeling level can only be to some extent arbitrary. That was the goal of my statement on Berean, right? All right. That the application of these letters is somewhat arbitrary. The consortium decides how to best arrange these letters and to these haplogroups. That was my point. Okay, that's what I was trying to express here on Berean. And I mean, maybe you guys didn't understand it, but I got a lot of flack. But this is what I was trying to say. Okay. And you can see the URL up here, right? ncbi.nlm.nih.gov.
Would you mind dropping that in the private chat for me?
Sure.
Much appreciated. So just to clarify, on the show, with Berean or whatever, there was a discrepancy as to how the haplogroup tree worked and whatnot. So at one point, you said that D came out of E, and then at one point corrected himself and said that F came out of E.
So what he was saying is, for the nomenclature, right? You got those clades, right? And you got the top level clades like A to T, right? And so when you go from E to F, right, you got to go through the subclass. So there's an algorithm that they have that generates for each of the new subclass that represents a new mutation. At a point, that algorithm runs out of allocations and moves on to a new clade, which is F. And that's what he was talking about. But understand, on the Berean show, you can't discuss all that in time when people beating you up upside the head.
So on the Berean show, it was Yeshu brought up that F does not come out of E. Do you dispute that or no?
Yes, because look, I'm not saying come out. He's using a technical term. I'm saying the way that clades are assigned. That's a difference.
Now, okay, you got it. Go ahead, Jacoba. Sorry.
The clades are assigned based upon sequential, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, sequentially. But before you get to the next major clade, you go through the subclass based upon an algorithm. And at the end, when you finish that, a new one will go into that new assignment. That new assignment would be the new clade. In this example, would have been F. That's what we were saying.
So just to be clear, so if I start with E and I go through all the subclasses of E, you're saying if there's enough mutations, it eventually will have so many mutations that it turns into F?
Based upon the algorithm, because the consortium decides when you go to the next class, major class,
right, based on a major mutation.
Yeah,
and they say this is a major one. They identify a major mutation and they say this deserves its own major clade. That's what I was saying, right? And you can go back to Berean. That's what I was saying.
Okay. So also on Berean's channel, you said that you don't study F and G too much. Tell you from what I understand, from what I recall, is that correct?
I don't study haplogroups at all. That's what we're here for, right? I mean, I don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. We don't believe it is the way to look at who your forefather is.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, personally, for me, right, I believe haplogroups are majorly used for migration of people groups with a common ancestor, right? So like they were talking about E1B1A going here, E1B1B going there. And there's a video by Dr. Jensen that talks about that exact thing and his interpretation of the migration patterns of E1B1A and E1B1B and the intermixture or admixture with some Turkish groups and all these things, right? So, you know, and that's his opinion. And so my whole point is that the whole cladogram, right? The whole tree that we all look at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with the nodes and the subnodes. That's how we look at it in computer programming, right? That when you look at that, it's nothing but a tool, right? The use of haplogroups is a way to group common haplotypes, right? Or similar haplotypes, right? And so when you use that tool, everybody will come up with a different understanding of the results from that tool, just like if you run a report. Okay, so when we talk about the use of haplogroups, we're looking at it from the use standpoint and how they reach their conclusions. We don't take the stance that, okay, well, Professor so-and-so says X, Y, and Z, right? Because every time you read Professor so-and-so's paper on it, he says hypothetical, theoretical, right? So the question is, okay, if it's hypothetical and it's theoretical, how did they reach their conclusion? So sometimes we'll go through and we'll look at the data and say, okay, well, that makes sense or that don't make sense. How did he reach that conclusion? Because that doesn't fit the data. And then they talk about how sometimes the data is already corrupt, especially with ancient DNA. We gave you the email on that, right? So sometimes, and I'm going to show you another post from 23andMe that there's issues with haplogroups, right? And so the way Israelites have been using it, in our opinion, you can disagree, is incorrect or sometimes incorrect, okay? And so my point is, when you look at things, you need to understand how it works. It's like I said on my post on Facebook. I say, look, don't show me the answer for the calculus equation. Show me how you got there. Right. And that's what we do. Why? Because we're programmers. You all look at what they say and what they say about the migration routes and all this stuff. But one thing y'all don't never add. How big is the sample size? Sometimes these dudes have a sample size as small as 4. And then most of the samples that they got are for Caucasians. Right? Because why? They're Caucasians. So your data affects your interpretation of the haplogroups and its migration patterns, which is why you have so many different theories on the Natufians, the Mashubians, and all these things, right? So that's our point. We looking at the data, y'all not.
As a matter of fact, on this channel, I talk about the sample sizes quite a bit. And as a matter of fact, you and I have actually gotten to the exact conversation about sample size on Sister E's show, where I was talking about the concept of us starting me and a couple of my own people starting our own third-party DNA reading website and whatnot. And then you guys asked me some questions and whatnot. So I said, I didn't want to answer them on air, but I'll let you know. You were asking me like, well, how can you control the sample size? And I said, well, we already have the sample sizes to control. We already have our own raw data we're in control of because we've already done these DNA tests with our other companies and whatnot, right? So I agree with you on the sample sizes concept, right? That they're way too small. And particularly when it comes to Africa, they're way too small of populations to deal with the entirety of the population. Completely agree with that concept. No issue.
Yeah, we like that. We like that. And when you said that day, I was like, this is good news that you have access to someone who's trying to get a larger sample size of Africa so we can really get some good information, right? Yeah. I was like, this is good, right? So I mean, we didn't have a problem with that, and so. Real quick, just so I can be clear. So are you saying that haplogroups are good for migration, just not good for descent? It's good
for me because understand this is Yacoba. For me, I believe it's good for migration and not for descent. And the reason why is when you look at it, think about it. Like they'll classify things as Natufians, Mashubians, and all these things, right? Or the Romans or whatever classification they want to use. But at the same time, in your mind, they're thinking that they're all one homogeneous group of people. And sometimes you might have Romans in there, Turks in there, Israelites in there. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so that classification is subpar as well, right? So because for us, I'm not, at least for me, I don't know about y'all, I'm not worried about the other people. I'm only worried about the Israelites. Now, the question is, how do we define who's an Israelite? Is E1B1A Israelite? Is E1B1B Israelite? Because I'm going to tell you right now, according to Professor Jansen, he said E1B1A and E1B1B are descendants of Ham. That's what he's saying. Now, I wonder why. He has a bias, of course, right? So I'm just saying, when you look at all the information, there's problem. That's our whole point.
Right. And you know, when we brought up Abu mentioned this on Berean, when we brought up the issue where the European person was E1B1A, it's 97% European, right? That is a good example of why haplogroups really can't tell you who's a descendant of Jacob, because the person's overall genetic makeup is European. There's no way, just because he has an E1B1A on his Y chromosome, that he is still to this day a descendant of Jacob, right? He's 97% European.
Jacob haplogroup.
Well, I'm saying, yeah, that's a hypothetical, right? But we can't make that we can't say, oh, this guy E1B1A, he's a brother, when he's 97% European. And Abu gave his scenario. Like I told Abu, I said, okay, I have a Mercedes. I'm replacing it with Mustang parts. I keep the Mercedes logo on my car. Is it a Mercedes? Right? So, I mean, we're talking only about one single mutation on a Y chromosome. One genetic mutation. What about all the other changes in the genetic mutations that don't match? I mean, ideally, we do need to get a copy of an Israelite DNA, right? Ancient Israelite DNA. That will prove a lot of people's hypothesis or disprove it, right? But until we have that, I mean, we're really playing games with it, in my opinion.
And here's one thing I want to add. A problem that I have with the whole idea of haplogroups and stuff. They're dealing with the Darwinian concept, evolutionary model, hundreds of thousands of years. Well, that don't fit with the Bible, right? Not if you believe that humanity been around for 9 to 6,000 years, right? But they're dealing with hundreds of thousands in terms of that that mutation that they're looking at. If the mutation is not as long, right, then they toss it to the side and they say, well, we're only going with this mutation because it's 100,000 years, right? That's flawed. Now, even, once again, I'm gonna bring up Dr. Jansen. He says that sometimes we don't know if the mutation rate, like let's say for black people versus white people, is shorter. Now, if the mutation rate on that haplogroup on that particular chromosome is shorter, but let's say theorizing, right? White folks are 100,000 years. Well, how does that work? You see what I'm saying? So I'm looking at trying to find Jacob, and Jacob is like, let's say what are you, about 300 BC, something like that, I guess. But we supposed to be looking 100,000 years in the past.
And that's what I was saying on Berean. I was making the point that we don't know the mutation rate. We don't know the frequency of mutation. So, a lot of these DNAs that we're trying to place as something other than Jacob may very well be Jacob. And it may have been a mutation, right? We can't go by the Darwinian concept, right? We can't. I mean, Abraham wasn't 100,000 years old. And I mean, I think it's important because the consortium, their whole theory is based on a Darwinian model. We can't ignore that, right? It impacts our understanding on how frequent is the mutation, right? We need to nail that down, because there's a problem there if we're trying to find who Jacob's descendants are, but yet your average haplogroup is what, 50,000 to 100,000 years ago.
So this is why I said take time off the table, right? Because so people who cite Dr. Jensen's work, you have a lot of young Earth creationists who are Bible believers who fit the haplogroups into a young Earth model, right? Using Dr. Jensen's work is still, you know what I'm saying? So there's people on both sides, the old Earth and young Earth, who use both models, who cite his work or whatnot, right? So it's not that you can't fit haplogroups into a young Earth model, you know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. Like, go ahead.
But let me ask you a question though. But then how do you find Jacob? You see what I'm saying? Over 100,000 years, you don't have no DNA source that says, okay, this is Jacob's grave. We can compare it to this DNA, right? How do you find Jacob? You can't.
Well, on top of that too, sorry, brother, but on top of that too, you know, you have to factor in the fact that we don't know the mutation rate, right? So let's say we drop the Darwinian model. Let's say we go with a more modern historical.
Are you familiar with the young Earth
right?
creationist? Hold on, real just so I understand. Are you familiar with the young Earth creationist stances on the mutation rates?
No, actually, I don't. But I'm just saying, if we do follow that, I'm saying, how do we determine when a mutation on a major clade occurred? Right? I mean, everyone has a theory. That's our point.
So right, so there, just so we're clear, just so you can understand, there are currently young Earth creationists right now who are putting forth scientific models that are falsifiable with predictions, etc., based upon young Earth creation mutation rates, based upon a concept of genetic front loading. You can look in I can send you some stuff in the background about people who are working on it if you want to. So we don't have to get into the weeds here, but there is a young Earth creationist model to where within a 6,000 year period they're fitting all these mutations that we see now in those 6,000 years. They'll say it fits from Adam to now, and they have a whole reason why they deal with it that way. So long story short, they believe that like Adam's DNA was perfect as could be, right? It was genetically front loaded with perfect DNA, and that it degraded over time, right? And so the degradation of the perfect DNA is what we see is our current mutations and whatnot. That's a real short breath on how they talk about it because it's real intricate and whatnot. But there is a young Earth model dealing with mutation rates.
But if you notice in the conversations I've heard with Israelites, it's not on the young Earth creation, and the documentation that they're using is based upon the evolutionary model. So I'm like, unless you know somebody else, because everybody else I heard seem to be using the evolutionary model.
As a matter of fact, the person that you call the lion that is a coward, aka the lion that is of Israel, aka Ibri, he literally works with both models. He puts
that?
The lion that's a coward.
Yeah, the guy that you get, y'all got to beef with him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't listen to him.
Yeah, he works with both models.
But here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Just like you expressed just now, right? This is working theory. This is academic, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to make sure when we're teaching people that this is not something that's definitive. And the majority of the people teaching haplogroup is like, this is definitive. And that's why I mentioned on Berean, this is a theoretical science. And I mean, most of the documentation is educated guess, hypotheses, right? And so I think when we do tell our people about these things, they need to know that a lot of this stuff is a hypothesis, just like you said with this new group that's working this new model, right? It's still a hypothesis that they're working out.
So are you saying sex chromosomes are a hypothesis? Or are you saying like tracking them over time is a hypothesis?
Migration patterns, right? I'm like, well, how do you use haplogroups, right? Common ancestor, where they been? Okay, so I'm like, I mean, that question sort of floors me because I don't get it.
Well, because haplogroups, I mean, sex chromosomes is different than what we're talking about, which is haplogroups, right?
How?
I'm about to tell you, haplogroup.
Real quick, because for example, MTD. You're tracking. Go ahead.
For example, Y chromosomes have multiple loci or locations, right, where there are mutations that you can actually study, and you could potentially find a flaw in the modern haplogroup model, right? What happens today is they've identified a few locations where they look for haplogroup mutations, but there are others, right? Because the chromosome is that big. They have only designated certain locations of the Y chromosome and use that to identify where they want to look for a haplogroup. Okay, they don't look at the entire chromosome. All right.
Right.
So
I'm not saying that they do.
Well, my point being that how can you validate anything with a single mutation when there are actually a lot more mutations on that one sex chromosome?
So we're agreeing that it's a sex chromosome, correct?
Y is, yeah. Y. There's two sex chromosomes, X and Y.
Gotcha. Okay. So haplogroups. So am I not tracing that over time, or what do you think I'm tracing with haplogroups? Just so I understand.
Well, unless you're doing a test, a YSTR or autosomal test, right? All you're doing is looking at the fact that there were mutations in their group, and you're following that one mutation or group of mutations on the planet, right? So if you're looking in the Levant, you're looking where that mutation has been in the Levant, which they call a haplogroup or a clade called E or whatever they're talking about.
But mutation on what chromosome? That's what I'm
On
trying
the
to
Y chromosome.
Got you. That's what okay, so we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, isn't haplogroups on the sex chromosome? I mean, we were
That's-
always on the same page.
That's what I said 3 minutes ago, and it was no. So that's what I'm trying
No,
to make clear.
no.
We never said that, bro.
Okay, family, you guys in the comments, did we say that? Did we say that? We didn't even bring up sex chromosomes. We were
I
talking
did.
about,
That's what I'm saying. I did.
We were talking
But
about
we never
haplogroups
said
the whole
anything about
time.
sex chromosome.
Okay,
Right.
so okay,
You
hold on. If we're dealing with haplogroups, are we dealing with sex chromosomes or no?
We said yeah from the beginning. That's understood. We actually gave you the answer. I don't know. I mean, you making it sound like we don't think it's on the sex chromosome.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, dude. You got me confused.
Is that
bro.
the accusation? Because
Okay.
no, is that the accusation that we're
There
not
is no-
talking about sex
so-
chromosomes?
So let's keep it clear, right? Like, so I ask questions, I don't make accusations.
Well,
Well, no,
ask the question correctly.
the
'Cause I was
assertion then.
confused.
Yeah, I'm
Ask
just
the
confused.
question correctly. So I'll ask the question the same way I asked the first 2 times. When we're dealing with haplogroups, are we dealing with sex chromosomes? Yes or no?
Of course.
Anybody looking at haplogroup know that?
I know
That's
that.
yes.
That's
Okay,
like asking.
cool.
That's like asking
I
me.
think we all.
That's like asking me if I'm a basketball player. You play with a ball? I'm like, come on. I mean, that's an insult.
Yeah.
You're insulted by a question?
I'm insulted by that
Okay,
question.
No, hold on. I respect you enough to know that you understand that haplogroups is dealing with X and Y chromosome. I think you should respect us enough to know the difference as well.
Well, okay. So how about instead of you being offended, you recognize that when you answered the question, you didn't give a clear answer that was specific.
No, you didn't ask
Okay,
the
hold
question
on.
right, bro.
I want the audience to say, did we answer him incorrectly? It was a simple question, and we answered him. Yes or no?
The beautiful thing is,
Audience, yes or no?
This is all recorded.
One,
so if I'm right or you're wrong,
two,
this
if
can
we
be
didn't,
recapped.
audience.
Well,
This
no,
can
we
be
got.
recapped.
I want the audience to vote. He simply asked us
Okay,
when we're
check this
talking
out.
about haplogroup, are we talking about sex chromosomes? And we said, of course. That was the answer.
Okay.
Did we say anything else?
Okay. Someone from the audience, you are more than welcome to come up and clarify this. I'm gonna drop the link.
All we need is a 1 or a 2. We ain't got to come on the panel, but you can if you
You
want.
can, but yeah, 1 or 2. It's a simple question. This guy out here saying we crying. We ain't crying. Well, you tripping.
Man, when
Do
you
you
see me
understand?
crying, gonna be the
Just
last day you
clarify.
hear. It's gonna be the
So-
last day you ever see me crying. I ain't
mean,
your mama.
the bottom line, family, that was a bad question. And
I ain't your
that's
mama.
as simple as that.
It's a bad question to get a baseline understanding on something.
You invited us to talk about haplogroups. If you think we're ignorant enough not to understand we're talking about sex chromosomes, then why you invited us on here?
Thank
Okay,
you.
so just to be clear, you're on here saying that F comes out of E, and that's not how haplogroups work.
I didn't say. I said how the clades are assigned. Go back to the fucking shit at the beginning.
How the
And listen to the thing.
consortium.
Stop
how the
lying on us.
consortium-
Dude. See, you doing
Well,
You gonna control yourself like a man, my G.
look, how the consortium makes a decision. That's what was said. Now you're up here twisting things because you feeling a little funny because you
Nigga,
asked
I'm
a
out.
silly
You can kiss
question.
my ass.
You asked a silly question. You feel a certain way. You shouldn't have asked that question because it was disrespectful.
I
You
feel
know
silly?
it was.
Hey, check this out. I don't feel.
You know
silly,
it was. You do,
bro. You gonna let me talk on my channel?
Go ahead. Go ahead. You could mute me.
No, I'm not gonna mute you. I'm gonna let you know you're gonna let me talk on my channel. Respect.
Go ahead.
What up, sister? How you doing?
I like the way this feel, yeah. Let my soul cry, yeah, yeah, yeah. Minister, We gonna speak from the heart on this one. I'm performing lyrical funerals, no obituary. I killed your boy and brought him back to life. Pet cemetery. My anointing not based on attendance at a seminary. Scarlet witches, they attracted to the visionary. Everywhere I go, I bring the word with me, missionary. Soldier drafted in the war machine, military. Pay attention, what I'm saying to you, legendary. You got the demeanor of a front desk secretary. That mean you take the calls, but you don't make the calls. That's why you hate, cause ain't nothing fake about me at all. Now I dare you try to say that with a straight face. My delivery in tip-top great shape. I'm too advanced for you, light years, space age. No evolution for you cavemen, stone age. I'm a thoroughbred, rock solid. I came from the bottom to the top, rock climbing. I grew up in the hood, pros and cons. That's that full court pressure when the ambulance roll out the stretcher. Why can't you see it's not logical? And you live diabolical. Boy, your point of view smaller than the hair follicle molecule. This for all of them that follow you, smoking all of them barbecue. When I pull up, your voice don't correct itself with no auto-tune. I got a whole nother level that I can enter whenever I gotta deal with the devil. I pick a whole nother method. I hear a whole lot of yapping. They wanna see my reaction. I'm really out here in the community making it happen. I don't really think they understand the dilemma. They ain't looking at the man in the mirror. I can't say it any clearer. The plan is very simple. It's time to start playing in the temple. Before somebody come and put the can on your temple. Reaching like a baby with his hand for the nipple. The Grand Reaper coming with his hand on the sickle. In the van coming with a ram with it. With the van coming get him. I am so glad that I changed up. Made it out of where I came from. Watch for the slide in the hook of the slow ball, fastball, and that change up. That ghetto lifestyle, it changed us. Go back to visit, it ain't changed much. Only difference is now the way that my brain process information. And Satan, been after my license day one. Let me say something. Only reason that I'm still alive today because God's grace is amazing. Just another raisin in the sun. Dream deferred when things occurred. Now you getting served right on the curb like a lemonade stand. I just gave you the benediction, let the whole church say amen.